Welcome back to the worst publisher of 2022, the show where we try to work out, in the year of 2022, who basically screwed it up the most and the least. Today, it's Electronic Arts, and I'm just going to dive right into their releases. TLDR Sports. It is notable how EA have had so little outside of their live services for the non-sporting audience. So when we look at their launches, right, they have Grid Legends, which was decently but not amazingly received. We have F1 2022, critically well received, some issues from players. Madden NFL, FIFA 23, the last FIFA, of course, NHL 23, and Need for Speed Unbound, which is a Need for Speed that's certainly taking a new art style, which to some people is good, to some people is less good. It does stand out, but certainly, I think marketing-wise, I don't know if it was that heavily pushed. But that's basically it. They had 3 racing games. They had 3 sports games. I think a situation of launching into, I think with sports, a large, I wouldn't even call it niche, but like it is a large niche, so probably plenty of success there. Obviously, FIFA Ultimate Team doing decently enough in the racing space. Now, I think for sure, a lot of entries into franchises that are not particularly stellar.
They're also not been taken very well by Metacritic users. Yeah. If you look at those scores, Madden's got 18, FIFA's got 14, NHL's got 25. They may be just spinning their wheels, or I imagine it's just down to it's the same game every year for all of these franchises largely. Even minor improvements that developers are probably quite proud of won't be represented in how the overall experience of the game feels, especially when it's every year. I imagine they're just like, why is this resetting all my progress? Why am I jumping back at the start of the treadmill, giving them all my money again every year?
I mean, who knows, but the money does keep on going up.
That's the thing. It's like, it doesn't matter what the critics or the users ultimately say, if the broader user base always just buy the game and always throw in the money. And that's where they've had this free ride for years now, and they're just still on it.
Yeah, well, it's like, hey, if we have the licenses, if you want the football, that you don't. Yeah. Well, we'll see how it goes with, of course, EA football or EA soccer, whatever they end up calling it, this year. In terms of delays, there's only one that we know about actually, and that is the Dead Space remake. That was initially going to be actually late last year, but it's actually been moved to early 2023 before there being a confirmation that it will be in January this year.
Yeah,
so
which is one
it's coming in pretty hot. But otherwise, there's really not that much that is in the public, which kind of means we've got to talk about their notable ongoing titles. We won't bore you with sports. We already know everything that's going on there.
Yeah.
It's worth saying that the Sims is still a complete powerhouse, right? It's now free to play. I think that makes a hell of a lot of sense, given that the big money is, of course, in the humongous quantity of DLC, because they've been making DLC for that game since 2014. It's just 8 years of DLC. And that's actually after they reported that it reached, this is incredible, record daily, weekly, and monthly players in December of 2020.
That's
like
crazy.
they talked about that in some of their financial reporting. Like, that is stunningly strong tail to a game. Now, ultimately, that does mean that there's more DLC coming. There's more, the stuff packs. And Sims 5 is not going to be here anytime soon, because it has been talked about. It's basically been pitched as a creative platform. It's called Project Renee. That brings back a lot of things from Sims 3, because Sims 4, it represented a large downgrade over Sims 3 in so many ways. So basically, it's trying to bring that back, and I think just more Power Lives-like elements. The initial showcase for Project Renee actually did look pretty good. That said, Power Lives also looks pretty brilliant, and I imagine Power Lives will be able to at least compete on some aspects, maybe just the home and space creation, really well, and probably sooner, all while not costing people the extreme price.
Yeah, that's where I find it a little bit interesting, because Power Lives, to any core gamers, especially say if anyone watching this video is interested in The Sims, they will find Power Lives when that's out, and they'll be able to go, well, Power Lives is likely the more soulful, the more consumer friendly version of this, the one that's going to be tailored better to our uses than The Sims 5. But given that The Sims 4, which is released almost 9 years ago and is free to play and reached record players, I imagine that's a pretty big case of the people playing this likely aren't gamers in a big way.
Yeah,
and that's historically been a thing for The Sims. So I feel like this is going to be, because we just mentioned about them having a free ride with sports games, I imagine it'll be largely the same with Sims 5. It'll just be how much of their most dedicated audience will be cut away when it comes to Power Lives. I think that's the only fear they have. But they don't even have that much of a fear because if they have less lead time, especially under EA now being better in terms of actually developing games, as far as I understand, under Laura Mill and their like kind of revamped approach, and especially them learning lessons from Apex and from Battlefield, which we will get into shortly. I think there's just a case of it might not be as, Sims 4 clearly like a miss early. They probably won't do the same again. They probably won't make that same mistake, especially if they are smart enough to see Power Lives on the horizon, which is basically just saying they've had a big free ride and now they have a bit of a fight on their hands. But I think they're Power Lives wasn't out early enough to catch EA with their trousers down in the way EA have been for a long time. So I think The Sims is going to continue likely, more or less.
Yeah, it's also notable there are paid mods on PC. So that's, I think, something that'll mean more content. To go to the other things though, Apex Legends, which is still delivering content pretty consistently. Still leading everything that it's promised. So a new character every season. There's a 5th map in the game. A whole bunch of story and event content as well. They in May of this year crossed 2 billion in lifetime bookings. Half of that alone was within the 2022 fiscal year.
Oh, that game's growing.
Yep, and that is before the mobile game came out, which of course has its own heroes, modes and maps, which is quite big. There's then also seemingly a new single player game that exists within that universe being developed. So really, it turns out like as long as you don't call it Titanfall, it does pretty well. It's maybe not the rule, but it is, continually going strong. Very much unlike their other big live service, which is the one that has been honestly kind of ripe for disruption for quite a long time. Something I think Call of Duty has tried to do by adding in Battlefield-esque game modes into quite a lot of its recent entries. But so this game entered 2022 in a hard place, right? 21 ended with basically a massive leadership shakeup in the wake of this game's honestly just disastrous launch. They then announced that their live service content would come out in June the following year. Like, that's when they delayed Season 1-2, which is bonkers.
Echoes of Halo.
I mean, worse in some ways, right? That is because there were so many bugs that needed to be fixed, and a lot of just design feedback had to happen. And they really did triage a lot, actually, because it is important that we talk about not just the disaster, but the response to it. So the easier fixes were actually made a little bit more quickly. The more complex ones that required player feedback, those were worked on in obviously a bit of a larger time frame, but they were being worked on. One of the biggest things, though, was actually stepping back major back-of-the-box features that players didn't want, right? So taking the breakthrough mode down to 128 players, confirming that any maps that are not already in development are going to be made for 64 player. So basically moving away from that, and then Hazard Zone, which is just not going to receive new support after Season 1. It wasn't popular. It was in the same way that they just tried to do Fire Zone to get a Battle Royale. They just decided to make Hazard Zone for their sort of extraction type game mode. And it's like, maybe Hazard Zone would have worked if it was a separate free-to-play game. In the same way that maybe Firestorm would have worked if it was a separate free-to-play game. And it didn't feel like those games are actively damaging Battlefield, because the need to, I suppose, have some form of cross-progression or whatever with the specialists. The whole design of specialists seems to have been made for Hazard Zone, and then had a big knock-on effect in the player fantasy in the mode they actually wanted to play, which is the core Battlefield experience. So kind of weird. Yeah,
it just seems to me that they started in a really bad place from a really bunch of ideas that they clearly didn't actually think the full way through, or maybe it was an implementation issue, but they clearly didn't test them out with what realistic expectations. But it does seem like largely they kind of went, oh, and realized how stupid they were, which I think is kind of the good thing going forward, I think. It's weird where maybe it's just cope, but I see a lot of people been pretty excited for Battlefield's future, although it is with a massive asterisk of it's still the EA and the same people who made it. So hopefully they actually have learned properly, which is, we see that so much. We see that, I guess the recent example is Blizzard's World of Warcraft, where it was very much, how could these people have made this game this way? Yeah. And then the same people make the game way better next time. You go, oh yeah.
And this time, that leadership, that does include Zampella being more involved. There's a lot of projects going on. We should talk about some of the content though, right? So because the way Halo Infinite was just this slow, protracted death, and it took them ages to actually get their content cadence going. Well, June brought a new map, a new specialist, new gadget, new vehicles, with rollouts during that reworked an original map and just did a bunch of other changes as well. Season 2 was a new map, a new specialist, a new gadget, 2 vehicles, 3 weapons, and the addition of portal weapons with a whole bunch of things. Reintroduction of Rush as a permanent official game mode, 2 launch map reworks, and then in November, which is just like 2 months later, we have another new map, new specialist, new gadget, 3 new weapons, new vehicle, more portal weapons, quite a lot. Now the new map and vehicle, they felt in line with the final stand, which was such a crazy fun expansion of Battlefield 4. And then there's also been a further 2 launch map reworks and the rework of the specialist system back into being distinct classes, which is one thing that people really wanted. Now, a lot of people were then worried that it's like, okay, well, you fulfilled your obligation. I suppose you're just going to stop now. But actually, it seems that no. We've actually had the confirmation the game is not going to be left out in the cold after Season 4. Instead, there is going to be a Season 5 in 2023. And then obviously the question is, how long will they do anything after that, right? Before they just feel it's time for a new mainline Battlefield. Now, even on that for this franchise, we got quite a lot. So there's now multiple new studios who are coming together to support this franchise outside of DICE. There's a new non-2042 single-player campaign that's being made by Ridge Life Games and the Halo co-creator, Marcus Leto, which is kind of interesting. And then there's also some sort of Battlefield mobile game that they've been testing throughout 2022.
Yeah, I think we just have to hope that whatever Marcus Leto's on is a little bit better than, because he was the one behind Disintegration, wasn't he?
I believe so.
And that game did not release to any sales or positive reviews whatsoever. That was a pretty big disappointment. But I think there's a weird, I guess, a sense across this like worst publisher series where they're all at different stages of life. It's always nice to use really obvious analogies. And both Xbox and EA seem to be in roughly the same place. Obviously, EA's pumping out a lot of outright exploitative sports games, so you can't really forgive them too much for that. That's just a bad thing they've been doing to fund everything else. Apex is going well, but it's the same over at Xbox, where their live services are largely actually going fairly fine. It's just their actual game releases aren't. Mm-hmm. So I have this image in my head of them being like, they're like the person in the gym all the time wearing a hoodie, and no one actually knows what they look like. It's about what whenever they decide to actually release their games, take the hoodie off, what will they look like?
Yeah.
Will Jedi Survivor launch and be an absolute, I guess, a bigger success than Fallen Order was, which was a pretty big damn success? Will that be like, here's Respawn, we've learned from Fallen Order, we're going to make a better one. We've learned from our ability to make stuff in Apex, it's going to be better. The next Battlefield is going to be massive because we've learned so much from our actual live service location. Same with The Sims 5. Same with whatever else they have on the go. Like, obviously, because I know Callisto Protocol was a little bit mixed in terms of reviews in cases. Like, will Dead Space be able to come back and go, yeah, we are the real Dead Space? Deal with that in the same way that people expect Xbox's like actual first party stuff to come out and go, this was in development for a long time, not because we were in bother, but because we were making it really damn good.
Yeah.
And that's the question. Will that be true, or will it just be we kind of learned some lessons and then forgot them when we're making a new game again? Because obviously very recently there was a thing Jason Schreier tweeted about, the size of budgets and timelines of video games means that if a AAA studio, a big one, like started a project from literal 0.0 from scratch today, it would likely be for a PS6 or the next gen Xbox instead of in the current generation. Is it going to be the case of they'll have a load of games that they started but weren't agile enough to learn all these problems and solve them like mid development? Are we going to have like one more cycle of EA games that are a bit like kind of haven't learned these lessons, or will it just be they'll actually do their job properly now?
I think that's BioWare will kind of matter there. To do some numbers on Battlefield, when you look at the recent reviews for this game, right, we are seeing, all reviews, 34%. Just recent reviews, though, 63%. And when you take a look at Steam charts at the 1 year view, you can see the game's well and truly dead, at a point. Then, whenever we start to hit June and the seasonal rollout of content, numbers get better before dipping back again, but then peaking more significantly than ever November 28th and remaining so far seemingly at a higher baseline. So they have done a pretty decent job there. That being said, That's only their Steam numbers, and overall, there's no way this game is doing as well as they thought it would do, but it is nice that they're at least keeping this going. Now, when we go into the news, one thing is acquisitions, where actually EA purchased no studios, but there actually were rumors that Amazon were going to purchase EA. Now, that did actually turn out not to be, and it was likely a known source deciding to cash in their credibility to make a payday on a bit of insider trading. We all love it when that happens.
Nice.
It was also then revealed that Comcast NBC Universal as chairman made an offer to Andrew Wilson that basically would be EA, an EA merger with a spin-off of that company in the form of NBC Universal. So basically, that's like TV, film, theme park, sports, streaming, EA slotting into that. To be honest, I think it would have been a big old disaster. They basically could not come to terms on the overall value or the structuring. Bring the C-suites together would have been chaos, and also would have meant like the whole thing is owned in majority by Brian Roberts, the NBC or the Comcast NBC Universal CEO. And Andrew Wilson would kind of be working to him, which maybe he wouldn't actually want.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things about Wilson being in charge of EA for so long. It's his company. I imagine he would like to very much keep it that way. Honestly. Yeah,
there's then of course FIFA. Look, we talked about this before, but in this year we're going to be getting EA Sports Football Club, EA Sports FC. That's going to be their game. It won't be FIFA. Now, EA is still actually going to have licenses for many of the teams and players because those are actually negotiated separately. But, of course, Inter Milan, they are going to be in eFootball.
Yeah, it's
stiff competition.
This is going well, you say that eFootball, obviously that released to an absolute nightmare, but Konami kind of did pick up the ball on that a little bit, which I think is interesting. Maybe not this time around, maybe far in the future. But I think the loss of branding from losing the FIFA name, as well as Konami kind of maybe trying eFootball and get grinding that a little bit,
well, it might actually work okay. Numbers for eFootball, I mean, we have very low numbers, like around 1,000 players, but then we do see it rises up. We're around 8,500, 9,500 to now a rough peak of around 12,000.
Yeah, and that's obviously that's not massive, but that's respectable enough. You can see, maybe not take away, but it's more like how much of EA's lunch needs to be taken by others. Just a couple crumbs scraped off the table, or does it end up, a decent part of their sandwich comes
essentially off on PC, it's a 10th of FIFA 23.
That's actually pretty impressive, to be honest. I know it's not massive on PC comparatively to the console market, but still, that's not bad. And you could see that coming with EA Sports FC because, obviously, I suppose American viewers might not understand this, but no one thinks of it as EA football. It's FIFA. The game is FIFA. That's what it's known as. That's what it's called by. If obviously, if you go into the shop and ask for FIFA, they'll say, oh, yeah, that's called EA Sports FC this year.
Yes.
And the same people will be on the box, so they'll probably buy it anyway. But it's like the cultural consciousness of, oh, I haven't heard of a new, there's no new game called FIFA. So unless you go to look for it, you'll likely not find it. In that weird sense.
Some normies could be thrown off, but I don't think it'll be the largest thing. And the idea of the game with FIFA being good. So FIFA's president, Gianni Infantino, said that only the best games will be FIFA, right? I can assure you the only authentic, real game that has FIFA, will have the FIFA name. And what's hilarious there is that they immediately then gave the FIFA name to 4 separate, crypto or NFT-based projects that are probably going to be shit. So, to be honest, I think EA are still going to remain king, but there will be a little bit of a funky transition. Another thing then is licensing stuff. Of course, we all know how successful EA Star Wars was, and I mean, it's funny, there was a laughing stock at the start, but hey, Jedi Survivor, Jedi Fallen Order, Battlefront 2, which they, fixed, and then once it was in a good place, decided not to support anymore, which is weird. We've got
Star Wars Squadrons, which everyone is like, yeah, this game is perfectly fine. It's good.
It is what it is.
Yeah, it is what it is. I ever went, EA made a game that is what it is. What timeline have we jumped into?
Yeah.
And that's continued since.
That moves us into their next deal, which is with Marvel. Disney. They're making games for Disney. There's going to be a single-player Iron Man game from the team at Motive, which, will it make FIFA money? No, but Marvel is undoubtedly big. And perhaps with their future content, they'll be able to get people excited again. It's just notable that like really good games like the Guardians of the Galaxy one apparently didn't, and I think this is where it's interesting to me, apparently those didn't like, I mean, they did well critically and stuff, but I remember hearing some talk about them not really making the money that Square Enix would be thrilled about. That said, it is Square Enix targets for games.
I think both EA and Marvel would look very closely at the performance of games and go, okay, what's the difference here? They would look at the Avengers not doing very well. They would look at Guardians not selling very well and kind of understand, oh, I think we know what the problem is. The problem is the marketing and the weight behind it. Because you look at Spider-Man and go, well, that wasn't MCU and that was a profound success.
Yeah.
So it must be about making the game good. Because that's the difference. Obviously, Guardians was fine, but wasn't marketed very well. And there's a little bit more out there in terms of who's in it. In terms of Guardians not being quite as household a name as Spider-Man, for God's sake.
Yeah.
And then looking at like Wolverine for Insomniac's game eventually. And you gotta go, okay, well, they know what they're doing. I as hard as it is to keep in mind sometimes, a lot of the people making these decisions are actually reasonably smart. They will be able to sit down and go, all right, well, just make an Iron Man game and they'll probably do all right. But we don't put Robert Downey Jr. in it because that'll make it not be as profitable. It could be too expensive. So can we do like, I guess, calculated expenditure that's not super risky? If you're EA and you say, well, yeah, we had Jedi Fallen Order and look at how well that did. And that wasn't particularly tied to any really strong parts of like Star Wars IP. It was the world. So we'll set you up stuff in the Marvel world.
Yeah.
We can use character names. We don't need the MCU world. It'll be fine. That's what I imagine anyway, assuming good faith from everyone involved there. And it's honestly like not really personally exciting because I can't imagine playing the fucking Iron Man game or a lot of these, to be honest. But I imagine they'll actually be, if they're, I guess, proficiency with Fallen Order and Squadrons and anything to go by, I imagine they can do perfectly fine.
Yeah, so there's probably plenty of pretty good single-player games actually coming out.
It's that weird thing where maybe it's just because there's, there's a lot less time for games, a lot more games now. But like it could harken back to the era of licensed games that a lot of us really did enjoy when we were younger, which is a bunch of mid-ass games, but set in good licensed worlds that the developers clearly cared about.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I think something that could tie into that is Laura Millet, who's like sort of running there. Basically, she's like the general sort of studio manager or whatever. But they've restructured some things so that each of EA's operating groups now reports directly to her. Now, the first time we really heard about Laura was when she was really championing how Respawn Entertainment made games and Vince Zampella, all of that. So I would kind of just TLDR this as pretty good. There's another interesting thing, which has been some community-led development that's been going on, right? This has been happening with the Dead Space game from Motive and Skate from Full Circle, where these have actually had the involvement of a community council from day one. And there's been feedback on all sides of that that's actually been really great.
Yeah.
Of course, the first evidence will come with Dead Space, but that does look pretty good. Mm-hmm. Now, to move to something that is less good, we do, of course, have that Codemasters acquired Slightly Mad Games. And, of course, Codemasters was acquired by EA. Now, Project Cars, then. It's a simulation racing game, much smaller team, but very much for, like, the big fans of, like, more sim-like racing. And unfortunately, Project Cars 1 and 2 have now been delisted. And that's because their car and track license agreements have expired. And seemingly, they have not found it worth renewing.
Yeah,
it's rough.
Just
downside of licensing, I suppose.
Yeah, which obviously is you think of, are they going to do any live services in the Marvel stuff? Are they going to do any Star Wars live services? And obviously they'll be easier because it'll be one company you're dealing with, but it's still going to be like it's just that challenge of live services not working well with the licensing stuff of the past, because all it takes is someone to change their mind. Especially if you're building like an Apex and you go, oh hey, it's Apex, it's a very Fortnite thing to do. We'll throw in a load of random characters, whatever. But you can't build a forever live service in an IP unless you're really tight knit with the company or you sign some perpetuity thing, which I can't imagine any big IP owner would be happy to do.
Yes.
Which is just going to be, it would be nice if they would just stop taking games down. Wouldn't that be nice? Because
Yeah.
it happens more often than ever before now.
And unfortunately, this is all comboed with Project Cars 3 being like a little bit of a departure, not really working out overall fantastically, and now the Project Cars label itself being shuttered. And there's a final disruption that ends 2022 it's insane. Like literally, the 31st of December is the last opportunity for you to have catastrophic news, and they did have it because an issue happened over the holiday break where Madden NFL online franchise mode stuff was struck with a pretty damn catastrophic error. 60% of the franchises for players are going to be unrecoverable based on their current understanding of the error. This game has been wiped for a significant majority of players.
Yeah, sorry.
And it's asking them to start again.
Sorry, did you have any really nice big investment in our heavily monetized live service? Whoops, all gone.
So
sorry,
rough.
sorry, we lost your money. It's effectively, it's like going into a bank going, sorry, we lost your money. You're like, what do you mean you lost it? It's gone? Like,
Where?
but where? It was, someone dropped the hard drive, it's on, it's gone now. You're like, cool.
Yeah.
Cool. And you imagine if that happens, like, how many of those people won't start again? How many of those people won't come back again? It's almost as if when people realize how much of a unreasonable scam digital items are, they might wake up sometime.
Yeah.
Maybe. I mean, as much as I love EA having loads of money to make loads of Apex stuff and loads of the Jedi Survivor and all that, I would also like if they had a report that said our live service bookings are in the bin because people stopped throwing money at us hand over fist.
Oh, we'd all love that.
Yes, we would.
Now, for what they're doing then, in 2023, we have Dead Space on the 27th
Good
of
year.
this month. We have Wild Hearts the 17th of February.
That'll be interesting.
Yeah.
That's that for anyone who doesn't remember what Wild Hearts is. It's them with Koei Tecmo going, hey, can you make a Monster Hunter, please? And Koei Tecmo went, we've already made 2 of those. They're called Tokiden, so sure, we'll do it, no problem. So that's like, of all the things they're doing, that's the most out there. And it'll be very interesting if EA try a different strategy and it works.
Yeah, and I mean, this is looking like a pretty damn decent year for core titles from EA.
Yeah.
Whereas it was all racing and sports in 2022. So Jedi Survivor, 17th of March. There is EA Sports PGA Tour, sometime 2023. We, of course, have Lord of the Rings Heroes of Middle-earth. Mobile trash, don't care. EA Sports Football Club, don't care. Immortals of Avium, coming out in 2023. This was announced, that's one of the EA original program games. It was announced at the Game Awards 2022 with only a cinematic. Then there's rumors of Dragon Age Dreadwolf in 2023, late though, which, to be honest with you, I'd be interested in. I'd like to see a return to that world that involves a lot of lessons being learnt. And as much as, like, I'm obviously pretty burned on BioWare, if this game is good, then the chances of the next Mass Effect project being good are way, way, way up. That's something I'm extremely interested in. So that's it for what we sort of suspect. Now, there is also Rust Heart and Skate, which are currently undated.
Yeah, Rust Heart's a weird one because the company basically been super silent about it for a long, long, long time. But the Twitter account's still just posting other things related to Studio, not the game. So it's very interesting what that actually is.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like an EA original Iron Giant adventure sounds like it would be maybe not like an It Takes Two, or maybe not one of those like darling kind of smaller games that comes out with a big label on it and does extremely well. But it's like, hey, EA, you're like, hey, there's money, make a good game, and then they make a good game. That would be like, that. If you're going to go for the what's a game publisher supposed to do angle, that's basically it.
Yeah.
Hello, we'll publish a game. Done. Happy days. So hopefully that actually does make a show.
So overall then, when we look at EA, I think we have a situation where 2021 was a bad year for Battlefield. We look at 2022, what do we see? Well, I think we do see a earnest attempt with Battlefield 2042. We went through the numbers today, showing that yes, that's actually had a positive impact. So, you know, that is at least good enough. And I think that they are not stopping after Season 4. That is, you know, that's a lot better than them just, you know, like, oh, we're going to fulfill the 1-year plan and then drop it. So I think that is better, that we know there's been a significant investment into Battlefield, that Vince Zampella has seemingly been brought over from some of his Respawn duties to kind of oversee things being better within that franchise is also quite good. When we look at Respawn, Apex, pretty damn brilliant. I know that players do have issues. I think it's like some lag related issues, just basically long-standing issues that the very hardcore players really they've just been asking for fixes for a while. But like knowing that they have a single player in that universe on the go, they've got their Star Wars games. 2022, it's a quiet year for them, and it's mostly one of not losses. Like, they have had losses, and you've had low Metacritics for many of these sports games. But it's just kind of weird, like, on their live services, I think they've been doing a good enough job. Like, Battlefield, up shit creek, but at least they stuck with it and seemingly are going to stick with it a little bit more properly. I don't know, it's weird, actually. I really find it hard to kind of give them a final score.
Yeah, it's really weird. The way I see it is, like, this year it's almost the same as Xbox, where they didn't feel in their mission to literally publish games quite as hard as Xbox did, where they released almost nothing. But it's like they didn't do a great job, but in the grand scheme of things, they're on like the quiet grind. And I think that's where it feels like to anyone watching. I imagine none of you give a shit about any sports games outside of how evil are EA. Are they going to win most evil company again? No, that'll just be Activision Blizzard King for the foreseeable future. But in the games that are coming out that would be interesting to you or I or yourself, it would be like they're just slowly working, trying to make good things kind of happen. A lot of it hinges on how well Dead Space and Wild Hearts come out, because I think Respawn are just free wins, because that's a trustworthy studio. They make good games all the goddamn time. There's no way Jedi Survivor will be anything less than at least pretty damn good.
Yeah. Like
Fallen Order was. It won't be a downgrade. That would be an awful experience. But I think it's just going to be, they get a profound this year, or yeah, for 2022. But maybe this year coming, they'll be like, you know what? You've earned, maybe not a lot, but you've earned a little bit of respect again, because you've made games that people actually want to play. Yeah. And I think that's what, because there's all these other, like kind of the debate over, are Ubisoft the worst publisher or are Activision Blizzard the worst publisher? Both are from different perspectives. It's hard to give EA worst publisher in any capacity, outside of maybe most exploitative for taking all of the FIFA Ultimate Team money. But
FIFA Ultimate Team is their Diablo Immortal, just on a larger scale.
Yeah, and that's like, you'd never want to overlook.
And it's also not free to play. Very majorly.
Yeah, they get the best of both worlds, something Blizzard would love to do, or Activision Blizzard would love to do. But it's outside of that, for core gamers, they're kind of just mostly harmless and doing nothing, which I think is and then if you like Apex, then they're just kind of okay. I think that's ultimately my thought, where it's hard to hate them outside of Ultimate Team. And maybe if you're a Battlefield fan and you're kind of like still seething, waiting for something to be like good and released good, this is like, you could do a lot better, yeah, but at least you're not as vile as you used to be. And it's been a while since you've taken a handful of studios out the back and shot them in the head, so at least that's kind of going for you. I don't think anyone's really killed studios recently. Then the people need developers too much for that to happen.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's the ultimate takeaway is,
yeah, that's it. I think
they're getting close to the best publisher just because they haven't made any egregious mistakes.
Yeah, this year is going to be really pivotal. If their Monster Hunter competitor is really good, Dead Space is really good. Like if Jedi Survivor is really good, like, and I mean especially if Dragon Age was to come out, we could see a 2022 or 3 even that is very strong for them. Okay. Until then, though, we will just have to wait and see. We'll likely do some sort of final, awards, maybe tier list or something for all the publishers. Till then, though, you can check out the rest of this series or the other news in the channel, and we'll see you next time.